When the world went to war, one machine rolled out of American factories and into the pages of history. It wasn't the biggest, it wasn't the strongest, but it was everywhere, on every front, in every major battle, from Normandy to Okinawa. This is the story of the M4 Sherman, a tank forged in steel, built by industry and driven by the hopes of a world at war. For the Sherman, American tank doctrine was completely outdated. The U.S. Army didn't see tanks as independent weapons. They were meant to support infantry and conduct light reconnaissance. The main American tank before the war, the M2 Medium, was already obsolete. It had weak armor, a small gun, and slow turret traverse, hopelessly outclassed by what Nazi Germany had already fielded. Everything changed in 1940, when Germany blitzed through France using modern tanks and lightning tactics. It was clear to the US military that America had no answer. It needed a new tank, a modern tank, and it needed it fast. In 1941, the US began designing a tank that could be built in enormous numbers, maintained in the field by frontline crews, and survive modern battle conditions. The result was the M4 Sherman. The Sherman featured a 75mm gun, a 5-man crew, sloped armor for better ballistic deflection, and a top speed of over 25 miles per hour. Its design wasn't revolutionary, but it was smart. Even the engine was standardized. Factories used everything from radial aircraft engines to Ford-built V8s. What mattered was not perfection, but production. The Sherman wasn't designed to win tank duels. It was designed to win a war. The M4's true superpower wasn't on the battlefield, it was in the factories. While Germany spent thousands of man-hours creating powerful Tigers and Panthers, America mass-produced Shermans with ruthless efficiency. A Tiger tank took over 300,000 labor hours to build. A Sherman took just over 10,000. By the end of the war, over 49,000 Shermans had been produced, more than any other Allied tank. Shermans filled cargo ships, trains, and convoys. They crossed oceans, landed on beaches, and rolled into Axis territory by the thousands. Wherever there was a fight, there was a Sherman. There was no single Sherman. There were dozens of variants, each adapted to different theaters and threats. Early Shermans used radial aircraft engines. Others ran on diesel or gasoline. Some had cast hulls, others welded. The M4A1 had a rounded cast hull, while the M4A2 used a diesel engine favored by the Soviet Union. The M4A3, powered by a powerful Ford V8, became the US Army's tank of choice. Then came the M4A3E8, nicknamed the Easy 8. It had better suspension, wider tracks, and a longer 76mm gun. It was faster, smoother, and deadlier than any Sherman before it. There were rocket-firing Shermans, flamethrower Shermans, amphibious Shermans, even mine-clearing Shermans that led the way across beaches and minefields. The Sherman wasn't just a tank. It was a modular war machine, endlessly adapted and improved. The Sherman's combat debut came in North Africa during Operation Torch in 1942. It went up against German Panzer IIIs and IVs, and it performed well. Its 75mm gun could pierce enemy armor, its tracks held up in desert sand, and its mechanical reliability proved far superior to anything the Germans or Italians had in the field. It wasn't invincible, but it was a tank American crews could trust. By mid-1944, in the fields of Normandy, the Sherman was facing its biggest test, the German Panther and the dreaded Tiger I. The Sherman's 75mm gun struggled against their thick, sloped armor. German tanks could destroy a Sherman at long range, well before the Sherman could fire back. Crews had to flank, coordinate with infantry, and rely on artillery or air support to even the odds. Sometimes it took 2 or 3 Shermans to take out one Tiger, but the Shermans kept coming. Because while the Germans built a few hundred heavy tanks, the Allies had thousands of Shermans. They had the numbers, they had the fuel, and they had the skies. In the Pacific, the Sherman faced a different war. It wasn't German armor, it was heat, mud, and suicidal defenders. Japanese tanks were no match, but caves, Bunkers and jungle terrain made each advance a nightmare. The solution? Adaptation. Shermans were modified with flamethrowers, others were fitted with dozer blades. In the volcanic hell of Iwo Jima and the coral wastelands of Peleliu, Shermans became bunker busters. They weren't just tanks, they were survival machines. The British needed more firepower, so they mounted their 17-pounder anti-tank gun onto the Sherman. The result was the Sherman Firefly, a deadly sniper that could knock out panthers and tigers from range. Fireflies were so feared by German tankers they were often targeted first. On the Eastern Front, the Soviet Union received thousands of Shermans under Lend-Lease. Though Soviet crews preferred the T-34, they respected the Sherman's reliability and used it to great effect in offensives from Kursk to Berlin. Many remember the Sherman as a death trap, and early on, that reputation wasn't entirely unfair. When hit, Shermans with dry ammunition storage would ignite catastrophically. But that changed with wet ammo racks, drastically reducing fires and saving countless lives. The Shermans were also criticized for its gun. It could reliably take on heavy German armor from the front, but heavy tanks were rare. Most German vehicles were Panzer IVs and Stugs, targets the Sherman could destroy. Was it perfect? No, but it was reliable, repairable, and always there. Even after World War II, the Sherman wasn't done. In Korea, it fought against Soviet T-34s. In Israel, Shermans were modified and fought in every war from 1948 to 1973. Across Latin America, Shermans patrolled borders and fought in revolutions into the 1980s. Some were converted into mobile artillery, others became recovery vehicles. Some even had new guns welded into their turrets. The tank that once fought at Normandy now was fighting in the jungles, deserts, and mountains half a world away. The M4 Sherman wasn't the best tank of the war, but it was the most important. It was the tank that showed up, the tank that could be fixed, fueled, and fired day after day, battle after battle. It was the tank of the citizen soldier, the tank of mass production, the tank of Allied victory. And its legacy rolls on. If you enjoyed this deep dive into military history, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and let us know in the comments what we should cover next.